The man on the bench, it started on a bench. Nothing elaborate, just a stretch of weathered wood held together by rusted bolts under the wide arms of an old oak in the middle of Larchmont Park, nestled in the historic heart of Savannah. To most, it was invisible. Kids clambered over it. Runners passed it without glancing. Tourists photographed the tree, not the bench beneath it. But to one man, that bench was sacred ground. Every morning at precisely 7 a.m., he came. Same bench, same cup of black coffee, same perfectly creased slacks, polished shoes, and a folded newspaper resting on his lap. His name was Langston Booker. He was 82 years old, a retired archivist, a widower, and a quiet giant whose fingerprints were all over Georgia's civil rights history. Decades ago, he had been one of the key architects behind a desegregation policy that reshaped the public institutions of the state. But nobody in the park that morning knew that. To most, he was just another elderly black man sitting quietly, watching pigeons and reading the Savannah Gazette. And then a young police officer noticed him, for all the wrong reasons. Officer Brent Maddox was new to the force, new to the city, and entirely too eager to prove himself. White, 27, and ambitious in a way that often came at the expense of judgment, he was known in his precinct for being proactive. To his superiors, that meant thorough. To those watching closely, it meant targeting people who looked like Langston. Maddox walked the park beat with his radio crackling softly, scanning the faces around him as if the bushes might yield a fugitive at any moment. His eyes landed on Langston, unmoving on the bench, cup in hand. Something in Maddox's mind clicked. He didn't recognize Booker, didn't care to. All he saw was a solitary older black man sitting still in a public space, and that was enough. He didn't approach immediately. He circled like a shark, keeping to the perimeter of the oak's shade, watching Langston flip through his newspaper, pausing now and then at articles about state redistricting, watching the pigeons that clustered near his shoes, hoping for crumbs that never came, watching for something, anything, that would justify what he already wanted to do. Langston knew he was being watched. He'd felt eyes like that before, in courtrooms, in classrooms, on the back of buses, and in the long stares of storekeepers who never saw a man, only a presence to be questioned. He didn't flinch. He sipped his coffee and kept reading. Maddox radioed in. "Suspicious male in Larchmont Park," he said casually. "Elderly, sitting alone. Bag at his side. Unknown intent. Making contact. No backup needed." He thought this would be quick. One old man. One bench. A simple flex of his badge. Langston didn't look up when he heard the boots on gravel. He knew that sound too well. The step of authority. The deliberate cadence of someone who believed the ground belonged to them. "Good morning, sir," Maddox said, voice flat and official. Langston nodded but didn't look away from his paper. "Morning, officer. You live around here?" Maddox asked. Langston folded his newspaper and looked up. His eyes were clear. "Sharp, I do. Got identification? I don't need to show you ID unless you suspect I've committed a crime." Maddox didn't expect that. His hand drifted to rest near his holster. Not threatening yet, but a reminder. Langston stared at him evenly. "What exactly do you suspect me of?" "Loitering." Langston blinked. 82-year-old black historian, seated on a park bench with arthritis and a cup of coffee. "I must be a real menace to society." The sarcasm landed like a slap. Maddox's jaw tightened. "I'm going to need you to stand and hand me your bag." Langston shook his head slowly. "No, you're not. You refusing a lawful order?" "I'm refusing to be harassed." That's when Maddox reached for Langston's arm. The old man stood before he could be grabbed. His posture was steady. No tremble. He wasn't frail. He wasn't afraid. And he said 6 words that cut the morning in half. "You don't know who I am." Maddox scoffed. "Don't care who you are." But someone nearby did. Seated on a nearby bench, just beyond the fountain, was Julian Cross, a federal prosecutor with the U.S. Department of Justice, Southern District of Georgia. Black, early 40s, dressed in a tailored gray blazer, sipping espresso and reading quietly until he noticed the exchange. He'd seen too many versions of this moment in his life. He didn't rise immediately. He didn't interrupt. He reached inside his coat and placed his thumb against the badge hidden in his inner pocket. Just a touch, a signal to himself that if the moment worsened, he'd act. And the moment did. Maddox tried again. Sir, I need to see that bag. Langston pointed to it with his cane. Inside that satchel is 50 years of civil rights documentation. Handwritten letters from Dr. King. Notes from Thurgood Marshall. Personal accounts from freedom riders. Photographs from marches I helped organize. If you touch that without a warrant, you're not just violating civil liberties. You're desecrating history. Maddox's face didn't change, but Julian Cross stood up. Officer, he called calmly. Maddox turned, already defensive. This is a police matter. This is a civil rights violation unfolding in plain view. Cross replied, walking forward slowly. I'm advising you to let go of Mr. Booker right now. And who the hell are you? Julian pulled the leather wallet from his coat and flipped it open. The golden seal of the Department of Justice shimmered in the light. Julian Cross, Deputy Attorney General, Civil Rights Division. The air shifted. Maddox's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Now, Julian continued, you're going to step back, explain why you engaged a citizen without probable cause, and prepare to be debriefed for an unlawful detainment. The crowd was growing. Phones appeared. Cameras clicked. A woman with a stroller had started recording. A jogger paused mid-stride, staring. The officer's power was evaporating fast, and he knew it. Langston lifted his cane and tapped the pavement once. The sound echoed like a gavel. You expected silence, he told Maddox. But silence is a luxury we no longer grant to the oppressor. You chose the wrong bench. You picked the wrong man. Julian moved between them, subtly shielding Langston. You didn't just pick the wrong target, he said. You picked the wrong century. This isn't 1961. You're not going to push an old man around without the world watching. Sirens wailed in the distance. Savannah PD was sending a supervisor. Too late. The narrative was written. The image was captured. Langston sat back down, but he picked up his coffee, cold now, and drank it slowly. Thank you, he told Julian. You shouldn't have needed me, Julian replied. But I'm grateful you were there. That night, the image of a young white officer clutching the arm of an old black man in a city park exploded across the country. But it wasn't just the image. It was the story. And the man telling it, Julian Cross, a federal prosecutor who wasn't about to let Savannah's buried truths stay hidden, that a formal federal investigation was launched within 48 hours. The Department of Justice opened a probe into the Savannah Police Department, starting with Maddox. What they found rocked the city: misconduct reports, suppressed complaints, a quota system that pushed patrols to profile by zip code. Julian Cross didn't just visit. He returned with a team of auditors, civil rights attorneys, and representatives from the Inspector General's office. They weren't tourists. They were architects of reform. Langston, meanwhile, never missed a morning at the park. He sat on that same bench every day, coffee in hand, eyes steady. But everything around him had changed. The bench had become sacred again. When the city tried to apologize with statements, Langston shrugged. I don't need apologies. I need accountability. That fall, a sculpture was erected at the edge of Larchmont Park. Not a statue of Langston Booker, but of a man on a bench, face blurred enough to represent thousands. The plaque simply read, "To those who refuse to move until the world sees them." Langston gave a short speech at the dedication. I didn't sit to make a statement, he said. I sat because I could, and because once upon a time, I couldn't. This bench is for everyone who held their ground, and for those who will. Julian stood beside him afterward. You changed this place, he said. Langston smiled faintly. No, I just reminded it what it could be. The breeze picked up. Leaves scattered. The bench stood firm, and the man who once simply sat quietly in the morning became part of history all over again. What began as a moment of profiling turned into a movement. What began with a quiet cup of coffee became a reckoning, and it all started on a bench.